Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you're having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled people story. I believe that farmers around the world need to stand together to overcome an unforeseen evil that has emerged in our midst. As a proud farmer residing in the Republic of Belarus, I have witnessed the transformation of the once fertile farmland into housing, attracting entitled individuals who fail to understand the true essence of a farmer's life. They perceive us as mere caretakers of cows, oblivious to the immense dedication and hard work we invest to sustain our livelihoods. One such neighbor, a city dweller who recently moved in next to my farm, epitomizes this misunderstanding. He holds the erroneous belief that farmers are ignorant and simple-minded. Little does he know about the intricate financial calculations we undertake to keep our farms afloat. But that's not the main issue at hand. Let me delve into the situation that led to our confrontation. Times have been tough for everyone in our area, and this neighbor of mine had a bright idea. He decided to convert his house into a makeshift hotel, with multiple small rooms for guests to sleep and dine. However, the absence of a proper parking lot posed a significant challenge for him. Seeking to exploit my land, he approached me with a proposal. Neighbor, hey, I noticed you have some vacant land. It seems ideal for my guest parking. Can I use it? Me, and what are you offering in return? Neighbor, money? None. It's just empty space, and I thought I could utilize it. If you think you can intimidate me into paying, you're mistaken. Me, unless you're willing to rent the space and compensate me, you cannot allow people to park there. Should you attempt otherwise, rest assured they will be towed before they even wake up. Naturally, my neighbor wasn't pleased with my response. Failing to coerce me, he resorted to purchasing a fleet of dilapidated cars, junkers beyond repair. To emphasize his audacity, he taped a threatening note to my door, warning me against crossing him. He believed he had connections and presented himself as a member of a notorious gang or mafia, hoping I would succumb to his intimidation. However, I refused to be swayed by empty bluster. Enraged by his actions and threats, I decided to inquire about the legality of abandoned vehicles on my property. I contacted a local scrapyard, seeking guidance on the matter. I discovered that if the cars were genuinely derelict, they could be sent to the scrapyard without much hassle. Legally, they were deemed abandoned, and I didn't need to involve the police or file any reports. Satisfied with this information, I arranged for the car's removal within a couple of days. During that time, my neighbor grew overconfident and, in an act of sheer insolence, parked his brand new luxury car across my driveway, obstructing my passage. Although it was technically on my property and parked illegally, it presented an opportunity for me to teach him a lesson in manners. That same day, as the scrapyard employee arrived to tow away the abandoned cars, I seized the moment and utilized my tractor to flatten my neighbor's ostentatious vehicle. Reduced to scrap, it joined the other cars in their journey to the scrapyard. As the last car was being loaded, my neighbor rushed out of his house, unleashing a torrent of screams. He frantically dialed the police, falsely accusing me of stealing his car and dismantling it for spare parts. However, my friend, the scrapyard employee, departed, knowing he was well within his rights. Meanwhile, I patiently awaited the arrival of the police, ready to handle the situation head-on. Neighbor, he took away all of my cars. I want him arrested for theft. Officer, is this true? Me, I have photographic evidence showing that these cars were abandoned on my property without any indication of ownership. I waited for several days to see if anyone would claim them, but no one did. Given their dilapidated condition, it was evident that they were junkers dumped on my land. If you'd like, I can show you the photos as proof. Neighbor, that's bullcrap. He knew they were mine. Officer, calm down. Based on the evidence and the laws regarding abandoned vehicles, it appears that he had every right to have them removed from his property. Leaving your cars on someone else's land is not a wise decision. Is there anything else? Me, actually, I have a quick question regarding the regulations governing business operations in this community. You see, my neighbor converted his house into a hotel without obtaining the necessary licenses. Would such an enterprise require legal permits if, hypothetically, I were to consider a similar venture? My question piqued the interest of the officers, prompting them to delve deeper into my neighbor's illegal business activities. It soon became evident that he had violated numerous laws, including the failure to register his establishment as a business and evade taxation. Swiftly, his illicit operation was shut down, leaving him burdened with hefty fines and legal consequences. At this point, his anger towards me intensified, leading him to pay yet another visit to my farm in a fit of rage. "Neighbor, I warned you not to mess with me. You have no idea who you're dealing with, farm boy. I'll show you the consequences of provoking someone like me. Sleep with one eye open." Me: "You talk a big game, but I haven't seen any substantial action from you. Let me make one thing clear. If you ever trespass on my property again, I will have you arrested. If you dare to threaten or attempt any harm towards me, you'll come face to face with the barrel of my shotgun." With my resolute response, my neighbor hastily retreated to his house, overwhelmed by his mounting problems. The local authorities scrutinized his illicit activities, ensuring that he faced the full consequences of his actions. As for me, I remained undisturbed, unyielding in my belief that nobody should trample upon the hardworking farmers who sustain our communities. Months passed, and news of my neighbor's misfortunes continued to circulate. The local government imposed severe penalties on him, requiring him to appear before a judge to answer for his transgressions. Suffice it to say, he had more than enough on his plate, and dealing with me was the least of his concerns. No visits from mysterious mafias or gangs ever materialized, confirming my safety and reaffirming the power of standing up against those who attempt to exploit and intimidate. The next one is a pro-revenge story. A while back, my grandparents, who have lived in the same house for decades, got new neighbors. It was a wife and husband with 2 kids, and they seemed fairly nice. The husband spoke to my grandfather a few times when they were outside and seemed genuine. He said he was a correctional officer, so his hours were strange, and he might be coming and going at odd hours depending on the schedule. A few months later, they went on vacation and asked my grandfather to watch their house for them, making sure no one was lurking around or breaking in. A few days into their vacation, my grandfather heard their dog whining in the backyard. So he looked over their fence and found the dog tied up on about a 6-foot lead with no water around. He couldn't get into the yard, so he called animal control, who came and took the dog. When the neighbors got home, the husband went ballistic. He hit my grandparents' door so hard they thought it was going to break. He got in my grandfather's face, called him every ugly word he could come up with, and told him that if he ever caught him outside on his own, he'd make him pay for making them lose their dog. It only escalated from there. In the middle of the night, someone took the large community dumpster from the back alley and threw it over the fence into my grandparents' pool. The kids threw eggs from their backyard all over my grandparents' back patio and house. Someone threw a grapefruit through my grandparents' window. The police were called every time but said we couldn't prove who was doing it, and they weren't caught in the act, so there was nothing they could do. I had enough, and I started making calls up the ladder with the correctional institution. I spoke to the warden at his facility, and I was told he would look into the issue. A few days later, he showed up again at my grandparents' house while I was there, going off again, and this time threatening harm to my grandfather again to teach me a lesson about trying to mess with his life. I went out the door to confront him, and he walked off and told me he wasn't going to hit me because he'd lose his job and I wasn't worth it. But he proceeded to continue screaming and threatening me and my grandfather as he walked back to his house. This time, though, I was ready for this prick, and I was recording everything from the moment he started slamming on the door. I called and spoke to the warden again and told him I had video evidence of the threats and this guy's general volatile nature. A week later, 2 guys showed up at my grandparents' house and said they worked for the Associate Director of Corrections. They sat down for over an hour with my grandparents and wanted to know every detail of events that had happened, so they were told everything from the dog to the vandalism to the threats. I came over and showed them the video I had taken, and we showed them copies of the police reports we had filed. Apparently this guy had an issue with his temper, among other things, and was here because he had been told to take a transfer or be terminated from his previous facility. So they had transferred him here. He ended up losing his job, and his house was foreclosed on. My grandparents were given an order of protection. We never saw them again. They left in the middle of the night, not long after we met with the director people. That prick, his wife, who swore at my grandfather and always glared at him, and their 2 kids, 17 and 14, who I know had a lot to do with the vandalism happening to my grandparents' house. Duck them. Thankfully, since they left, all is well. My grandparents have since gotten new neighbors who are wonderful people and own a local restaurant. They have even brought food over to my grandparents a few times and have proven to be excellent neighbors. The next one is a petty revenge story. About a decade ago, I worked an early morning shift at a fast food restaurant. We opened at 6 a.m., so I had to be at work at 5 a.m. I would leave my house at about 4:45 a.m. every morning. My management was pretty relaxed about the opening shift. Clocking in up to 10 minutes late wasn't really an issue, as long as you showed up ready to go. I came outside at 4:45 to find that a local police officer had pulled someone over and was now blocking my driveway. This had happened before, but usually in the afternoon, and usually I would just ask the officer to move forward or back a couple of feet, and then I could pull into or out of the driveway. No sweat. This officer, however, angrily informed me that I would have to wait until he was done. I snapped a picture of his car, texted it to my manager, and explained my tardiness. 40 minutes later, the police officer finally moved. I scrambled into the car and headed to work. I got there 15 minutes before we opened. I frantically started to brew tea, fetch ice, having to condense my 50-minute routine into 15. I almost forgot to brew coffee. Opening time rolled around, and the first group of customers came in. It was a group of our local police officers, led by the captain. I guess they were about to do a shift change. One of the officers in the group was the one who blocked my driveway. Anyway, the captain ordered coffee, and I regretfully informed him that there was a 5-minute wait on coffee because I got to work extremely late. The captain asked why, so I pulled out my phone and explained that one of his officers had blocked my driveway for 45 minutes for a routine traffic stop. The captain proceeded to chew out that officer in front of all of his colleagues and exclaimed that nothing short of a life or death emergency should block my driveway if it would interfere with him getting his morning coffee. It was never blocked again, and the captain always got his coffee at 6 a.m. without interruption. The next one is an entitled people story. So let me tell you a tale of two punk-ass dumbbells and their crappy parents. To really set the stage, though, allow me to talk about these two geniuses and their friends. They were part of a group of around 10 kids aged between 12 and 15 years old. These kids were your typical group of young British yobs who always spent their time together, committing varying degrees of criminal mischief and occasionally crossing a line to more serious crime. Now, the reason I paint you this picture is so you know that no matter what you read next, you know I'm not the a-hole. I'm a delivery driver for Uber Eats, and I drive a motorbike. It's a big old bike for sure, despite only being a 500cc bike. So I park up at a popular spot for both the delivery drivers, who work there, and the yobs, who terrorize the locals. So I go into the nearby KFC to pick up another order for the night. As I do, two of these yobs decided that they like my bike. So much so, they wanted to see if they can play a real-life version of GTA, and my bike was the vehicle of choice. I'm in the KFC waiting for the order, and they are jumping on the bike, thinking it would be easy. One sticks a penknife into my ignition barrel on the bike and starts the engine. One of the other drivers pops his head in and shouts, "Hey, OP, someone's trying to steal your bike." I immediately run outside just in time to watch the kid in the driver's seat kick off the side stand. Now here's the thing. When you ride a motorcycle, you need to plant a foot on the ground to support the weight of the bike before pushing off. You need to set the gears, and it's impossible to do so and not keep a foot on the ground. So he's got himself and a pillion passenger on the back, both with no helmets and on a bike that weighed 4 or 5 times himself. Between himself, the bike, and his friend, it was easily 300 kg he needed to hold up, and because he didn't know what he was doing, the second he kicked off the side stand, it toppled over on him. His friend was thrown off the bike and cracked his head open, and he had his leg and half his torso crushed under 225 kg of biking metal. The second that he dropped his fellow yobs, booked it down the street and abandoned him and his friend. I called the cops and an ambulance while canceling my KFC order pickup. I checked on the friend and his head was gushing. Police had gotten good at responding to the yobs because of how much trouble they were. In context, they had responded and moved these kids on over 120 times in under a month for a whole litany of crimes, ranging from trespassing to GBH, serious assaults if you're American. In the past week, they had responded to 10 different vandalism calls and 6 GBH cases. So, they see these two geniuses on the ground and me doing my best to use a wad of napkins as a makeshift bandage to hold the blood in. Police ask me what happened, and I say, they tried stealing my bike and found out it's not the same as the video games. They don't know it yet, but I'm pressing charges, and they're facing consequences this time. I wasn't really bothered about being nice, as they did try stealing my livelihood and my pride and joy. The cops looked stunned by my disregard for the fact that they were dealing with two young people who were seriously injured. And the following conversation ensues. Cop 1 asked, "Are you sure you want to do that? They're injured and they're just kids after all." Sternly I said, "Yes, their age does not negate the fact that they committed serious crimes." Cop 2 pleaded, "But you might screw up their lives." I replied, "They don't go to school, they commit crimes on the daily, and all you do is issue ASBOs, antisocial behavior orders. It's time for a few real consequences. Do your job and start reading them their rights." The cops didn't like my tone, but understood my anger, and proceeded to read the kid under the bike his rights as the ambulance pulled up. They tended to the unconscious kid first, and then one broke off to help the police tend to the kid that was under the bike. As they did, their parents, who had been alerted to the situation after the police called them, showed up, driving pretty recklessly and parking in a bus stop. They ran in and looked at the yob in pain and his friend unconscious. The father asked, "Why are you arresting them? They're just being stupid kids. We'll pay for the damage, I swear." I stated, "I'm having them charged because they aren't going to learn any other way. You're also paying for the damage regardless of the outcome of this day." The father then said, "I'll only pay for the damages if you drop the charges." Cop 1 intervened, saying, "Sir, I'd advise you to pay for the damages. It might help him at sentencing." The mother chimed in and asked, "How much time could he get without us paying?" 4 years easy, I stated. The mother went pale. She started blubbering, saying, "Why can't you let him go? He's just a kid." "He's also a criminal and needs to face the consequences of his actions. For once," I replied. Now the phrase I hated most was, "They're just kids." It did nothing but piss me off. Where I grew up, if you screwed up, you owned it and took the steps to make amends. No excuses, even if you were just a kid. In my book, the excuse was nothing but a cop-out, and the reason that these yobs and their friends felt emboldened to commit non-stop crimes. It was the cheapest form of entitlement, and these kids needed to learn a lesson once and for all. In the end, the kid who was unconscious was charged as an accessory to all the crimes of his cohort after waking up from a week-long coma. The other kid was charged with theft of a motor vehicle and vandalism after he got out of the hospital with a broken leg. That was before the police started taking complaints in the dozens about them and their friends, all of which were promptly rounded up and charged too. The parents paid for the damages to the bike to help reduce their sentencing, and tried arguing that the kid had done enough to appease the law. In total, the kid who tried driving my motorcycle got 2 years in juvenile detention with a 3-year probation, and the kid in the coma got 6 months with 18 months probation. The rest of the kids received anything ranging from hundreds of hours of community service to 4 years in juvenile detention, based on the number of crimes they were charged with. Between the 10 of them, they racked up a grand total of 127 charges that they pleaded down to 3 charges each. Now some might think that I was harsh in all this, but 2 years on, and the 2 kids who once tried stealing my bike were finally going to school. They apologized genuinely for their criminality and are doing better. So, all in all, they learned their lessons, and they were set to try and succeed more despite their past behavior. The moral of the story is when you excuse bad behavior, it allows for entitled behavior. When you punish it, it can stop people from acting worse before they cross serious lines. The next one is an entitled parent story. So, my aunt is always going camping with her son or hiking trips with her boyfriend about every other weekend, and she never takes her dog with her. The current excuse is that she doesn't think he'll get along with her boyfriend's dog. She never takes him anywhere and always has me and my parents dog sit for her. It wouldn't be a problem if he wasn't a dog from hell. He pees on everything, is super territorial, bites people for being too close, and terrorizes my cats to the point where they are terrified of coming downstairs when he's here. When we dog sit, she rarely picks him up when she's supposed to. She's always super late to everything. She'll say she'll be here at 9 p.m., and instead, it's close to midnight when she shows up. Or she won't show up until the next day, because she or her son were too tired to swing by on their way home to get their dog. There have been several instances where she asks my dad if he can watch the dog, and even without him actually agreeing to it, she'll show up in our backyard with her dog for us to watch. She has a history of having Facebook tantrums about how she has to cancel her plans during the times we say no, and how it's so unfair to her. Well, my parents are going on a 2-week vacation at the start of August. I'm staying home to take care of the house and our pets and have plans to go to my grandma's, who lives 1.5 hours away, to do a joint birthday celebration with her since our birthdays are in the first week of the month. My aunt heard about my parents' plan for vacation last month and decided around the 4th that she is going on a vacation to the Grand Canyon with her son, her boyfriend, and his son for those same 2 weeks my parents will be having theirs. The woman had the actual gall to ask my folks to reschedule their vacation so they'd be home to babysit her dog for 2 weeks. My parents flat out refused because why should they have to reschedule their vacation for her? She refused to accept their refusal, and while we were all hanging out in my grandma's backyard, she just kept trying to persuade us. Aunt, her and her son, never get to take a vacation together out of state. I don't want to have to cancel. Dad, you don't have to cancel. You'll have to find someone or someplace to watch the dog since, wife, and I won't be here or just take him with you. Aunt, well, he's not good with these kinds of trips. Mom, have you ever actually taken him on a trip? You don't know how well he handles these if you never take him. Aunt, well, he probably won't get along with boyfriend's dog and he gets so mean around people. OP, you're not going so you can watch him, can't you? You don't have anything else to do. Me, no, I have plans during that time and watching him on my own is exhausting. He bit me 3 times the last time he was here, and I have to watch him like a hawk to make sure he doesn't attack my cats. Aunt, well, the cats just hide upstairs when he's around, so they'll be fine. Me, and you think it's fair for our cats to have to hide upstairs for 2 whole weeks? One of them gets so freaked out by him just being there that she barely eats when he's around. 3 days is hard enough on her, 2 weeks is cruel. Aunt, well, you could figure something out. I really don't want to have to take him to the kennels for 2 weeks. I don't think it's humane to keep a dog in a kennel. Are you sure you two can't push your vacation back a few weeks? It's just a lot of no's. And eventually the conversation dropped and we thought that everything was fine. But then my aunt went on her usual Facebook rants because she probably felt no one in the family would see it. Only my mom, my sister, our uncle, different aunt's husband, and his son are ever really on Facebook besides her. She went on a woe is me, the world is unfair complaint about how we're mean and that family is supposed to help each other out. So why can't we just stop being selfish and watch her dog? And if she doesn't have anyone to watch her dog, then she and her son will have to cancel plans and won't be able to go with her boyfriend and his son to the Grand Canyon. How unfair that was to them. She's also been pestering us constantly since then, the Facebook post, to see if we're suddenly available to take her dog for her. I'm honestly not going to be surprised if she just shows up in the backyard again to drop him off, regardless of being told no. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.